What is going on, guys? It's the Mayor Dragon. So the Rugby Championship is finally coming back on. We had the week off last week, so teams have had a bit of time to get back to where they want to be, and we've now had the team announcements for round 3. So starting off, we're going to begin with the Wallabies versus Springboks game. It's just the first teams that I've seen announced today. I think Springboks actually announced this like 2 days ago. Super confident, nice to see. Starting off, let's talk about Australia first. Australia, 2 weeks ago now, didn't have a very good game against Argentina. They certainly looked like they were doing okay going forwards, but the counter-attack from Argentina just carving the Wallabies apart. It was a massive scoreline. I was so surprised to see that game go the way it did. So Australia are going to want to try and improve an awful lot from that game. There just seem to be a lot of things missing. A lot of injuries coming across the team now. It seems to be impacting the team quite a lot of big names missing. So hopefully this week they can do some switch-ups and see if they can have some improvements going on. So starting off in this front row, we have James Sipper, Falo Fingar, and Alan Alatoa. Now, they've been swapping around this front row a lot so far through this Rugby Championship. They keep trying to fit in Tali Alatupo. He's not making that impact. He's just not making that impact for me. I don't think this is a bad move to put him back on the bench. I think this is the better set of front three at the minute. So we'll see how they get on, but I think this is probably the right way to go for me. In terms of the lock departments, then we have Rory Arnold and Matt Phillip. I'm trying to think off the top of my head now. Back to the line-out situation. I mean, so many areas weren't going very well for the Australian team against that Argentina team 2 weeks ago. A line-out's going to be a big area in this game. South Africa wouldn't have been that happy with some of their line-out situations. Last week, their first game they had against New Zealand was so good, but South Africa have such a good line-out system. Hopefully they can cope with it, but I think I might be giving the edge slightly to the Springboks line-out here. In the back row, we have Jed Holloway, Fraser McWright, and Rob Valentini. Now, McWright, hopefully I'm pronouncing his name right. I did hear it a couple of times last week. I don't know, tried a bit too hard for me. There was an awful lot of penalties, knock-ons, carrying the ball himself just into the middle of nothing. I just want to see him calm down a bit. He's obviously very excited. He's got into that 7 shirt, taking over from Michael Hooper. I just saw him so often just isolated, trying to be this like one-man army. Just hold down the game, sort it out a little bit. I thought Jed Holloway and Rob Valentini did okay. Again, just big ball carriers, but just some of those backs for Argentina the fortnight ago were just carving apart. But for me, Fraser McWright's probably that standout that's beginning to be a bit of a chink in the armour for them at the minute. So just settle down, let them get on with the game, work as a team a bit more. In the halfback partnership, Nick White and Lola Sio. This is the team we saw last week. Lola Sio, I still rate under Quade Cooper, but I think we've lost Quade Cooper, unfortunately, for the rest of this tournament. So Lola Sio going to be in there. Not doing terribly too far. I saw him a couple of runs, but I think Argentina just did so well at just targeting him over and over again. And Nick White certainly get a bit chatty. Had a couple of words with the referee last week and was told to maybe just quiet down a little bit. So, I just, again, game management. I think this Australia team is just, when the pressure gets to them a bit, they seem to just fall apart a bit. They just got to hold it out because I think the South African team's going to bring an awful lot of pressure. So hopefully they'll be okay. On to the centres then. We have Hunter Paisami and Len Ikitau. Now, the centre partnership is one of the areas Australia are actually working in really well. I do on keeping up with the fantasy. Both these players are scoring really highly. Len Ikitau is having a really good series so far, getting over some tries, playing really nicely with the ball in hand. Just being the support runner at times has been really, really useful. I think the centre partnerships work quite well for them so far. That it was one of the few areas last week where I wasn't really seeing Argentina exploiting them too much in that centre. So I think it's probably a good move. Just keep with these two. This is what you want to be seeing. And then finally in their back three, Corey Betty, Tom Wright moves to the right wing, and then Reece Hodge will fill in that fullback position. Now, yeah, Tom Wright's been quiet since going to that fullback position. I much prefer him on that right wing. I don't think that's a terrible move. Been a lot of switch-ups in this back sort of section, but they've got a good depth of players, which is nice to see. Obviously, they've had injuries along the way as well, which hasn't really helped them. But Reece Hodge going in that fullback, I quite like Reece Hodge at fullback. I don't think that's a bad move. Also gives you that long-range kicking potential. Playing South Africa can come down to penalties, can come down to drop goals. So having a long-range kicker as well as Lola Sio, I don't think that's a bad move. Overall, as a 1 to 15, it's a good team. It's not that different to what we saw really against Argentina. There's a couple of switches. I just think it's a game plan more than anything. Last week when we saw them play Argentina, it just didn't really look like they knew what they were doing. So I think just getting the game plan down for this one's going to be a more important thing. In terms of the reserves, quite a decent bench to be fair from Australia. We have David Parecki, Scott Sio, and Taniela Tupou. Again, the scrummaging situation for Australia has not been terrible, but South Africa have such a massive bench usually coming on in that second half. You want to see people like Taniela Tupou making an impact that they're just not really making at this point. So I'd like to see, hopefully, them just get in and really try and dominate that scrum if they can do. Rest of the replacement forwards, we have Darcy Swain, Rob Leota, and Pete Samu. So going for the 6-2 split. It's not a bad move. We didn't see New Zealand do this last week, and they came away with a win. But I always think it's probably a slightly better way just to try and combat the way South Africa like to play with their 6-2 split that they like to go for so often. So 3 replacement forwards, I think, will just help bolster the amount of tackles, jackals, scrums, mauls that will probably be going on in this game. So I think that's probably the right move. And then the replacement backs, Tate McDermott and Andrew Kellaway. Now, I did see when this team got announced, a couple of people in the comment section for the Twitter page and stuff, loads of you would just want to see Andrew Kellaway starting. I probably want to see Andrew Kellaway start at fullback, even though when I think of him, I think of him more on that right wing. But yeah, I think bring on that second half, bit of pace. And a guy who does get over the try line quite a lot. So I don't think that's a terrible move to bring him on later on in that second half. I'm just not sure how much we're going to see these backs open up. I think this could be quite a big forward-based game. But I am aware that Australia have an incredibly high win rate against South Africa when playing at home. So they'll have that advantage. They'll be carrying that through. They'll just want to bounce back an awful lot from that Argentina game. Moving on to the Springboks team then, who last week lost out to a very replenished New Zealand team. That the first game they had, they looked so confident in just beating that New Zealand team. And then a fortnight ago, it sort of went a bit different for them. A couple of switches around again in the team. Only a couple of switches for them, but it seemed to make a big difference. And New Zealand also just got their stuff together. They really began to work together as a bit of a team. Scored some lovely tries and managed to actually make a bit of room on the field. One of the big areas working for the All Blacks last week was just being able to spread it wide. We saw the wingers and fullbacks and everyone just getting around that outside so often. So South Africa won't want to allow Australia to do the same thing. People like Corey Obeti or Andrew Kellaway comes on later. Can't afford these lads room on the wing, so just got to organise that defence a little bit more, which was so good in that first game. Fell apart a bit in the second game. So going into this game, not really going to be a great deal of changes to what we've seen previously. In fact, I think there's only 2 main changes going through in this team. So starting off with this front row, Ox and Che, Joseph Dweber and Franz Malkherbe. Now, Joseph Dweber last week, oh man, not very good, unfortunately. I really expected him to try and step up to that plate. Lineouts weren't going well. There was a couple of things against him for the breakfoot in terms of the scrum. The scrum wasn't looking good. Got subbed off in the first half. Malcolm Marks came on. Immensely better immediately. Starting Joseph Dweber again here. Big call. Maybe I would have wanted to see Malcolm Marks starting here. I look forward to see what you guys think down in the comment section about this. Hopefully he's had a fortnight just to improve his lineouts and stuff, try and get that a little bit more bang on. There's no point having the lock section of Eben Etzebeth and Lou Diaga, you know, if you can't get the ball to them in the lineout. So hopefully he's worked on that a little bit. The lock department's going to remain the same, which has been good. I think Lou Diaga, just again, a couple of penalties given away here and there. Just don't give them away. They're always very weird things, like not releasing the player in the tackle or going beyond the ball in the jackal. Just settle it down. You'll be absolutely fine. I think they're doing really well in terms of the line-out situation. They just got to get the ball to them. One of the key areas to work on here. In the back row, we have Sia Khaleesi as the captain, Peter Steph Dutoit and Dwayne Vermeulen coming in. Now, a lot of people, I don't think were that happy with Dwayne Vermeulen when we saw him last. So, again, just nice to see him make that bit of improvement. The defensive line, we've sort of known him for just organising the defence in this team. Last week wasn't really the best. So hopefully we get to see that defensive line organised. Hopefully he takes charge, bit of a defensive captain, just puts people in their place. I think that could work well for them. In the halfback partnership, one of the few changes in this team, Faf de Klerk coming back in for the team now. I thought after a hip of Caleb Clark, most people will be out for a good length amount of time. But Faf de Klerk coming back in, I genuinely think Hendrickse has been really good. I feel a bit ashamed, to be fair, to be dropping him back to the bench for this one. I think for a lot of people, Faf de Klerk still the main choice, but Hendrickse has been playing really well. So nice to see Faf de Klerk back from injury, but maybe wouldn't have done that change for me in this first game. Maybe would have put Faf on the bench just to bring him on in that second half, and then Andre Parlart just kicking points wherever he can do. But, you know, you've got to get him in the position to make those kicks. In the centre partnership, Damien Dialende and Lacania Am. Again, no switch-ups here. We know what these lads have done. Played every game so far, been playing well in that centre partnership. Lacania Am especially. Just been making good headway in these games. In the back three, Makazole Mapimpi, who actually had a better game last week, actually made some ground. We didn't really get to see it in the first game, so we'll be glad to have a bit of ball time. Will be nice to see him have a bit more time on the ball this week. Hopefully going to get pronunciations right. Warwick Halant, I believe, is the better pronunciation. Forgive me. I'm trying to work on my pronunciations. But coming in again, Jesse Creel, falling victim to the hip of Caleb Clark. So just some brutal games going on against that All Blacks team. Hopefully he can have a good game. I think he's a good player though, Halant. Hopefully we get to see him explode into this game a bit. And then finally in Damien Valemsa, in that fullback shirt, who I think is playing really well, and I would keep him like that. So overall starting 15, this is a strong looking Springboks team. I think they won't have been very happy with that performance they had against the All Blacks last week, even with a couple of quite harsh penalties, I think, personally, from the referee. Going against them, I still think they won't have been happy with some of their own performances, especially that defensive line. I think that'll be one of the key areas to work on against this Australia team. And then finally on to the replacements, where they've got a pretty decent bench, to be fair, not going to lie about that. So Malcolm Marks, Stephen Kitchoff and Vincent Koch, who, again, even just coming on from the bench, making big impacts. I thought last week there was still good play from them. I mean, Vincent Koch is also just doing really well with ball in hand. We saw him getting jackals, the massive tackles he's getting. So not even just boostering the scrum, but also just boostering all over the field. It's nice to see. Two more replacement forwards in Franco Mostert and Quagga Smith. Going for the 5-3 split. Not something I would tend to give towards South Africa. I normally expect to see the 6-2, but it might mean we might actually see a bit more of an open game from the Springboks. Australia are obviously trying to hunker down with the forwards. Maybe we're going to see the Springboks open up with the backs a bit more. Maybe we'll see some of these wingers get a bit more involved. And then the replacement backs, Jaden Hendrikse, Elton Yantes comes back into the team. Oh man, I look forward to see some of the comments about Elton Yantes going back into the team. The last time we saw him out was rough. Yeah, not really there. So I'm sure a couple of people have some thoughts about that. However, one of the big names back into this team, Fran Stein, coming back in. Really nice to see him. A bit of jack of all trades in Fran Stein. As a Wales supporter, I have been victim to the world of Fran Stein before. He's a very good player. Getting on in a few years now, but the boot that can come on in that late game. Again, we've got people like Reece Hodge for one team, Fran Stein for the other. I don't think that's a bad switch up there. I think they've got a nice competitive element going in there. So this for me is a really good Springboks team. I'm going to look forward to see this game, probably the most out of the two games on the weekend. I think this one could be a bit tighter. So in terms of a score prediction, what do we think? What do we think for this one? Now, I'm aware Australia have a really good run. Someone was saying on Twitter about just how many games they win at home. So I can see a lot of people backing Australia for this one, actually. I think I'm going to back South Africa for this one. I think maybe some of the injuries and the game we saw against Argentina might be a bit of a foreshadowing for what we might see in this game. Seeing South Africa go for more backs than forwards on the bench might mean we'll see a bit more of an expansive game from them as well. One of the areas that let Australia down was just the backs killing them last week. So I think I'm going to lean towards South Africa. And I'm going to say South Africa by 7. But of course, guys, what do I know about rugby? Yeah, make sure you do drop down in the comments your thoughts on the game, what you think of the team, what you think the score prediction will be. I always enjoy having a read through them, so make sure you do drop it down in the comments. And we are finally getting close to that 2,000 subscriber mark. So if you're seeing the channel for the first time, make sure you press that subscribe button just to keep up to date with all of the latest videos as they come out. I hope you all enjoy this one today, guys. I will see you all next time. Bye-bye.